rangers, alone in country nobody else was watching. 4 things that had been waiting for someone to finally come out and look. Each ranger walked out, but each came back changed for good. I did 9 seasons in a fire tower. I know what I'm about to tell you sounds like a thing a person invents in their first summer, when the isolation is still new and every noise in the dark is a bear. It wasn't my first summer. It was my 7th. The tower I worked was on Bald Knob, in the northeast corner of the Hollow County district. 14 by 14 box on steel legs, 40 feet up, glass on all 4 sides. You live in the center of your own workplace. There's a cot, a propane range, an Osborne firefinder on a table dead in the middle of the floor, and a radio. That's the whole world for 4 months. The job is easy to describe and hard to do. You look. You look at 80,000 acres of timber for 12 hours a day, and you notice when something changes. Most of what you report is nothing. Dust off a logging road, fog burning out of a drainage, somebody's wood stove. You call it in anyway. Better to be wrong out loud than to keep important things quiet. There were 5 staffed towers in the district when I started. Bald Knob, Sawyer, Little Kettle, Rowan Point, Hensley. By my 7th year, there were 2. Budgets, satellites, the usual. Little Kettle went dark, then Rowan Point, then Hensley. That last summer it was me on Bald Knob and a kid named Reyes on Sawyer, 11 miles southwest, and between us we were supposed to watch what 5 people used to. There used to be more of us looking. Every year there were fewer. And I think that something out there was counting, the same as I was. The smoke at Sadler Flat showed up every August. Sadler Flat is a bench of open ground about 2 miles northeast of Bald Knob, below the ridge, where an old homestead burned out a long time ago. On the map, it's just a clearing. From the tower, you can see the whole flat, and every year, in the 2nd week of August, a thread of smoke would stand up off it. Thin, gray, straight. No wind to it. The first year I reported it like I was trained to. Called the coordinates in, and dispatch came back easy, almost bored. That's Sadler Flat. That's the annual. Log it and let it sit. I asked what the annual was. The relief lookout I'd trained under, old man, 30 years in the district, told me the towers had been logging that smoke since before he started. Same week, same spot. Never spreads, never grows. Gone by dark. You drive out, there's nothing there. No ash, no heat, no ring. So the district's standing instruction, passed down lookout to lookout, was simple. Log it, don't drive it. 6 seasons I logged it. 6 seasons, it was gone by dark. The 7th year, I drove it. It wasn't bravery, and it wasn't even much curiosity. It was that I was the last man on that end of the district, and I'd started to feel like the rule was somebody else's, handed down from people who weren't there anymore to check whether it still held. Reyes on Sawyer couldn't see the flat from his angle. Nobody could see it but me. After you've been alone for months, you start to feel like the things nobody else can verify aren't quite real, and that you could walk right up to one and settle it. So on the 2nd Tuesday of August, when the tendril of smoke stood up off Sadler Flat the way it always did, I logged it. And then I got in the truck. It's a 40-minute drive to reach ground that's 2 miles away as the crow flies. Down off the knob, around the shoulder, up an old grade to where the road quits at the tree line. I parked where the road quit and walked the last quarter-mile in. The flat was empty. Open grass going gold, the black bones of the old homestead foundation off to one side, and no smoke. None. Not a wisp, not a smell of it. I'd watched it stand up off this ground an hour before, and now the air was clean. I walked the whole flat. I put my hand flat on the dirt where the smoke should have been rooted. Cold. I felt, standing there, exactly the foolishness I'd driven out to feel. Like I'd caught the rule being superstition and could go back and say so. That's when I saw the bench. At the far edge of the flat, near the foundation, there was a bench. Not a park bench. A homestead thing, a split log on 2 stones, the kind of seat somebody makes to sit and look at their own land in the evening. Weathered silver. Old. And I knew, the way you know the furniture of a place you stared at through binoculars for 6 summers, that the bench had not been there. I had glassed that flat 1,000 times. There was no bench on it. and there was someone sitting on it. It was late afternoon, the light coming in low and gold across the grass, and the figure was maybe 80 yards off, seated, facing away from me, out toward the drop where the land falls off to the valley. Sitting the way you'd sit to watch a sunset. Still. My first thought was ordinary. Hiker. Somebody who'd come up the far trail. I lifted my hand to call out, and I didn't. And at the time I wasn't sure why. But after reflecting on it, the answer was the proportions. It was sitting like a person. But it was too long in the back, the distance from where a person's hips fold to where the shoulders start. It was too much of it, so that the figure sat tall in a way that didn't add up, like a shadow thrown up a wall. And the head sat too far forward on the neck. Not turned, just carried forward, out past the shoulders, angled down at the valley, the way a heron holds its head before it strikes. Everything about it read as a person sitting quietly to watch the light. And nothing about it, when you held it in your eye for more than a second, was shaped like one. I stood at the edge of the flat, and it sat at the far edge of the flat, and neither of us moved, and the smoke I'd driven out to disprove was the least of what was on that ground. Then the radio on my belt spoke. It was the district channel, and it was my own dispatcher's voice, the same easy, bored tone from 6 years of Augusts, and it said, "That's Sadler Flat. That's the annual." I had not keyed anything. The channel was open, and it was her voice, and the cadence was hers exactly, and the words were wrong, and the figure on the bench had not moved its head or its hands, and I understood, all at once, the whole cold length of it, that the voice was coming out of the thing on the bench, wearing the sound of the one voice that had reassured me every year that this ground was nothing to worry about. I did not answer. I walked backward. I did not turn my back on the flat until the tree line was behind me, and then I ran the quarter-mile to the truck with my heart going so hard I could feel it in my teeth, and I drove the 40 minutes back to Bald Knob in maybe half that, and by the time I got the truck stopped at the base of the tower, the light was nearly gone. In hindsight, the tower was the worst place I could have gone. A glass box on stilts, one way up, one way down, a lit room in the dark that can be seen from every direction. But at the time, the tower was home, and safety, and a locked door 40 feet off the ground, and a radio that could reach Reyes and dispatch in the whole waking world. So I climbed the steel stairs in the last of the light, and I let myself into the box, and I threw the bolt, and I stood in the middle of my glass room with the firefinder at my hip, and I looked out at the dark coming up out of the drainages. I keyed the radio. I raised Reyes on Sawyer. I told him, I don't know what I told him, that I'd driven the flat and seen someone and that something was wrong with the channel. He came back steady. Good kid. He said he'd call it up the line, said stay put, said he could see my tower light from his and he'd keep an eye on it. I can see your light, he said. And then, a few seconds later, in a different voice, flatter, something's on your stairs. I felt it before I heard it. A shift in the whole tower, the particular sway a 40-foot steel structure makes when weight comes onto the lowest flight of stairs. Then the sound. Not fast, not the rush of a thing charging up. A slow, deliberate ascent. One tread, a pause, the next tread. The exact patient rhythm of something that has all the time there is and knows the door at the top doesn't matter. I have never in my life been so afraid. And the reason is the pace of it. A thing running at you is an animal, and animals can be frightened back. This came up my stairs at the speed of a man climbing to sit down in the evening, and the radio at my belt said, in my dispatcher's warm and bored and terrible voice, "Come sit. Come sit. That's the annual." The glass around me had gone black, and I could see myself in all four walls. A lit man in a lit box, 40 feet up, in a room with one door. And I understood that I had climbed into the most visible place in the entire district and locked myself in it. I didn't wait for it to reach the top. I went out the trap in the floor. There's a maintenance hatch in the floor of most of those towers, for running cable and for the times ice locks the door. I hadn't opened mine in 3 years. I got it up, and I went down through it onto the steel underframe, and I climbed down the outside of the tower in the full dark, hand over hand on the cross bracing, while above me the weight came up onto the catwalk and tried the door I had locked. Once, gently, the way you try a door you already know how to open. I fell the last 12 feet. That's where my hands failed. I caught the bottom brace to slow myself, and it stripped both palms open on the rust and the sheared bolt ends, and I hit the rock at the base, and I got up anyway, and I ran for the truck, bleeding from both hands, and I did not look back up at my own lit windows, because I did not want to see what was standing in them, looking down, wearing whatever it wears when it isn't being a person for anybody's benefit. I made it to the ranger's station on the valley floor a little after 1 in the morning. Reyes had already called it in. There were people waiting. When they went up to Bald Knob at first light, the tower was fine. Door bolted from the inside, exactly as I'd left it. My log open on the table. The last entry in my own hand. The Sadler Flat smoke, logged. 4:11 that afternoon. There was no smoke at Sadler Flat that August again. There hasn't been since. The relief lookout who trained me told me once that the annual smoke had shown up every year for as long as the district kept records, and it stopped the year I drove out to it. I've thought about that more than anything. I've thought that maybe the smoke was the polite version, the thing you were allowed to log and leave. A knock. And that when I drove out and walked onto the flat, I answered it, and it didn't have to knock anymore. They closed Bald Knob the next season. Budget, they said. Sawyer went the year after. There are no staffed towers in the Hollow County District now. Nobody sits up there looking anymore. Which means nobody's up there to see the smoke if it ever starts standing up off Sadler Flat again. If you ever work a job where they hand you a rule that seems too old to still be true, remember, a rule is not superstition just because the people who made it are gone. Sometimes the people who made the rule are gone because of the thing the rule is about. There's a piece of the ranger job nobody puts on the recruiting posters, and it's paperwork. Specifically, it's the permit box. At the head of every backcountry trail in the Hollow County District, there's a wooden box on a cedar post. Inside is a pad of self-issue permits, carbonless duplicate forms. You fill it out, name, party size, entry date, and exit day. You tear off the white top copy and drop it in the locked slot below. You keep nothing. The yellow stays bound in the pad. Once a week, a ranger comes out and collects the loose white copies from the slot to reconcile them against the yellow duplicates still in the pad. White copy plus matching yellow means somebody went in. If their exit date passes and nobody's reported them out, that's when the yellow copy becomes the first page of a search. I worked the Cutshin Trailhead box for 4 years, every Monday. Unlock, collect, reconcile, restock. It is the most boring sentence I can write, and I would give a great deal to be bored by it again. The permits started coming in wrong in my 4th spring. The first one I almost didn't notice. I was reconciling. White copies in one hand, flipping through the yellow duplicates in the pad, and I hit a yellow duplicate with no matching white. That happens. Sometimes a permit blows out of the slot, or a hiker fills one out and pockets both copies by mistake. You note it and move on. But this yellow copy was filled out in full. Name, party of 1, entry date, route up the Cutshin drainage to the ridge. And the entry date was 9 days out, in the future. You can't file a future permit by accident. You fill these out standing at the box, the day you walk in. Nobody drives to a trailhead to register a height for next week and then leaves. But there it was, pressed through hard onto the yellow, in handwriting I didn't recognize, for a man named on the form as one Dale Firth, entering the Cutshin drainage in 9 days. I flagged it, felt foolish for flagging it, and restocked the box. 9 days later, a man named Dale Firth walked up the Cutshin drainage toward the ridge and did not come out. The permit was in the box before he came. His name was written down, in a hand that wasn't his, before he ever stood at that post. And then he arrived, on the day the box said he would, and he walked in, and the mountain kept him. After that, I read the box differently. I started going through every yellow duplicate, not just reconciling the loose whites. And they were in there. Not many, one every few weeks, scattered through the pad among the ordinary permits. Future dates, names I didn't know. Party of 1, almost always. Routes that were always real, always specific, always to some part of the district a person could plausibly go. Somebody, or something, was filling out permits on my pads, in my box, in order, between my Monday visits, and the top white copy of each was always gone. Torn off. Filed in the slot, the way you're supposed to, except it never was in the slot. I collected that slot every week. The white copies for those names simply did not exist. I did what you're supposed to do. I took it up the line. I laid the pattern out for my district supervisor. The future dates, the vanishings, the names. He was not unkind about it. He pointed out, correctly, that Dale Firth was a real disappearance with a real open case, that people go missing in that country every year, and that a spooky coincidence in a permit pad was not evidence of anything. He offered me a rotation to a front country post like a kindness. I understood exactly what he was telling me. This is what happens to rangers who spend 4 years alone with a locked box. You start reading it. So I went to find the one person in the district who'd read it before me. Her name was Rebecca. She'd retired 11 years earlier off the same backcountry beat, and she had a reputation I'd only heard in pieces, that she'd left early, that toward the end she'd filed reports the district quietly declined to act on. I found her in a house at the edge of the forest with a garden she clearly spent all day in so she wouldn't have to be inside. I didn't have to explain much. I said permit box and future dates, and her hands went still in the dirt. She told me she'd worked the same pattern for 2 years before she quit. She'd tracked the names, that was her word, tracked, like they were game. And the reason nobody up the line ever saw what she saw, and what I was now seeing, was that the names didn't disappear in one place. Dale Firth was Hollow Counties, but the others weren't. She found the names in incident logs from all over. A man off a trailhead 3 counties east, a woman gone from a wilderness area 2 states away, a hiker vanished from a national forest at the far end of the range. 19 different jurisdictions, she said, over the years she'd counted. 19 agencies, each with one open case, none of them talking to the others, none of them ever putting their one name next to somebody else's one name. The pattern only exists if you're standing at the box that writes them down, and there's only ever one of us standing at the box. Then she asked me a question I wasn't ready for. She asked if I'd found my own name yet. I told her no. I told her I'd read every yellow in the current pad and my name wasn't in it. She said, "Read the whole pad, not just this year's. Go back through the pads you've already reconciled and filed. It doesn't file you for a date that's coming, it files you for a date that's already passed. A day you already walked in and came out fine and never knew. And then it waits, and it writes you again, forward this time." I went back to my office that night, and I pulled the reconciled pads, 4 years of them, and I went through every yellow duplicate I had ever collected. And about 2/3 of the way back, a pad from my second summer, a Monday I have no memory of being any different from any other, I found my own name. My handwriting, or a thing that had studied my handwriting until it could pass. Party of 1. A date 2 years gone. A route up the Cutshin drainage to the ridge, a walk I'd taken 100 times and come back from without a scratch. And behind it, in the current pad, 10 pages from the top, in the same hand, my name again. Party of 1. Cutshin drainage. 26 days out. Rebecca said the permit is a claim. The first one, in the past, is the thing marking you, the day it decided it could have you. The second one, in the future, is the day it means to collect. And the only person who ever gets to see both is the ranger who empties the box, because you are the only one who reads it. That's not a curse. That's a warning it can't help giving you. It has to file the permit. That's the one rule it seems to be under. It has to put it in the box, in order, in your own hand. Which means you get to read it first. I burned it. The whole current pad. I drove to the trailhead that night, and I unlocked the box, and I pulled the pad with my name 26 days out, and I lit it with a road flare in the gravel lot, and stood there until there was nothing left but the wire spiral binding. Then I put a fresh pad in the box, drove home, and resigned in the morning. I don't know if it worked. Rebecca burned hers too, 11 years before me, and she was still alive in that garden. still pulling weeds so she wouldn't have to sit still. So maybe burning the claim breaks it. Or maybe it just moves the date, and she and I are both walking around inside a reprieve we bought with a road flare, waiting for a pad neither of us empties anymore, to fill up with our names again. If you ever work one of those boxes, when you unlock it on your Monday and collect the slot, don't just reconcile the loose copies. Read what's already in the box. Read the whole pad, front to back, every duplicate, every week. Because the box will tell you who's going in, and sometimes it tells you it wants to keep you. The Old Ridge Road gate was the first thing my supervisor showed me, and the last thing he explained. It's a standard Forest Service gate. Heavy galvanized pipe swings on a post, padlock and chain, the kind you've driven past 100 times at the end of a fire road. It sits about 6 miles up the Old Ridge Road, at the point where the county maintenance ends and the road turns to something older. Past it, the road keeps going, up the ridge, into country the district technically administers and functionally never visits. There's nothing up there worth the drive. No trailhead, no lookout, no reason. When my supervisor handed me the beat, he drove me up to the gate, and he told me the one rule that came with it. Keep it closed. Check it on your patrol. If you find it open, close it. If it won't stay closed, chain it and call it in. And then he said the part I didn't understand until later. Whatever you do, don't stand there working on it after dark. If it's open at dusk, leave it open, log it, and come back in the morning. I asked him what was up the road. Nothing you want to go find at night. And he would not say another word about it, the whole drive down. And I marked him as one of those old district hands who liked their mysteries, and I did not think about it again for most of a year. The gate stayed closed. I checked it every patrol. Padlock, chain, closed. Boring. Exactly the way the permit box is boring. Exactly the way the whole job is boring. Right up until it isn't. Then, that fall, I came up the Old Ridge Road on my evening patrol, and the gate was open. Not forced, not cut. The padlock was hanging on the chain, still locked. Locked around nothing, the chain lifted clear of the gate, and the gate swung wide, standing open across the road like an arm held out. The light was going. It was that gray-gold end of a fall afternoon where you've maybe got 30 minutes before you need headlights. And I remembered the rule, and I want to be honest. I remembered it, and I decided it didn't apply to a locked gate hanging open by itself. Because that wasn't can't get it closed. That was vandalism, or a mechanical failure. And I was a professional, and it was 30 minutes to dark, and I was going to close a gate. I got out. I walked up to it. I put both hands on the top rail to swing it shut. The pipe was hot. Not warm from the sun. The sun was nearly down, and the metal in the shade should have been cool. It was hot the way a stovetop is hot, a heat that has no business in galvanized pipe at dusk in the fall. And by the time my brain finished telling me that's wrong, let go, it had already burned me. I let go and my palms came off the rail, and the pain arrived a half-second late the way deep burns do. And I stood there in the road with both hands turned up, and the skin across both palms already blistering white and gray. And I thought I heard, in the instant I touched it, the sound of a large fire. The deep, soft roar of a real conflagration, close, all around, for exactly as long as my skin was on the metal, and gone the moment I let go. No fire, no smoke. Clean, cool evening air and an open gate, and my 2 ruined hands. And past the gate, up the road, in the last of the light, something was standing. It was upright. It was the height of a tall man, and it was not shaped like one. The proportions were off in a way I couldn't hold still long enough to catalog, and the whole outline of it shimmered, the way the air shimmers over blacktop in July, the way a thing looks when it's radiating heat. It stood in the middle of the old road past the gate, and it did not come toward me, and it did not need to, because the message was the gate. The gate was the hand it reached through, and I had just closed my own hands around it. I got in my truck, holding the wheel with the heels of my hands because my palms wouldn't grip, and I drove the 6 miles down in the dark, and I left the gate standing open behind me, exactly the way my supervisor had told me to a year before, and I hadn't listened. Log it. Leave it. Come back in the morning. In the morning, the gate was closed. Padlock through the hasp, chain snug, cool, galvanized pipe. Closed the way I'd found it every patrol for a year. As if I'd imagined the whole thing. Except my hands were wrapped in gauze at the clinic in the valley, and the doctor there had asked me, carefully, what I'd grabbed, because contact burns that deep and that clean come off machinery or a hot pipe. I started looking at the district's old records. Fire logs, mostly. I'm not sure why I started there, except that I'd heard fire when I touched the gate, and I wanted to know if the ground under that road had ever burned. It had. There was a fire in 1931 that ran the whole upper ridge, a bad one, the kind that made the county histories. And here's where it stops being a story about a hot gate, and starts being something I've never told straight through to anyone. I found 3 documents about the 1931 fire, and they will not reconcile. The first is the district fire report. Official, typed, filed the month after. It gives the acreage, the containment date, the cause listed as lightning. Clean. Bureaucratic. The second is a property loss ledger, a list of homesteads and structures burned for the damage claims. It's longer than the fire report suggests it should be. And on that ledger, among the names of families and the descriptions of what they lost, is a homestead at Sadler Flat. Burned to the foundation. 1931. The third is a county newspaper account from the week of the fire, and the newspaper gives a containment date 11 days earlier than the district report, and describes the fire as already out, fully out, cold, on a date when the official report has it still actively burning across the upper ridge. 2 records of the same fire, both official in their way, describing a blaze that was simultaneously burning and long extinguished, 11 days apart, on the same ground. I don't know how to make those 3 documents agree, and I've stopped trying. What I think, and it's only what I think, is that the 1931 fire is still a live question in a way that fire isn't supposed to be. That something up on that ridge did not finish, or did not agree to be finished, and that the gate on the Old Ridge Road is where the line got drawn afterward, by somebody who understood better than I did what it costs to be on the wrong side of it. Keep it closed. Don't put your hands on it. Don't work it after dark. Those aren't a crank's superstitions. They're the instructions of a person who already got burned. My hands healed. The scars are strange. The doctor said they'd fade, and mostly they have, except across both palms there's a line where the top rail sat, a little raised, a little shiny, and on cold days I can feel it, a warmth in both palms that isn't there, the ghost of a pipe that had no reason to be hot. I put in for a transfer that winter, and I got it. Somebody else has the Old Ridge Road beat now. When I handed it off, I drove the new Ranger up to the gate, same as my supervisor had done for me, and I gave her the same rule, word for word. Keep it closed. If it's open at dusk, leave it open. Log it. Come back in the morning. Don't put your hands on it. She asked me what was up the road. And I understood, finally, exactly why my supervisor answered me the way he did. Because there's no true answer that doesn't sound insane, and there's no safe answer that isn't a lie. And the rule is the only real protection you can actually hand somebody. So I told her what I'd been told. Nothing you want to go find at night. The last track I ever read on that mountain started as a cougar's and ended as something else. I stood over the place where it changed, where 4 feet came down and 2 feet stood up and kept going, on my own trail, into the country I had to climb through to get home. And the thing that has haunted me most in all the years since is not that I've found it. It's that an hour earlier, a station down the mountain, that same animal had crossed my line as a cougar, the most extraordinary find of my career, and nothing unnatural about it at all. I read tracks for the state. My job was a thing called a transect, a fixed line up a mountain, 10 stations, walked the same week every month, where you read and record the signs of every predator that's crossed it, so the district knows what's living up there and what it's eating. Kettle Divide, in the upper Cutshin drainage. I'd walked it 6 years running, always alone. It's a one-person job, and there's no budget for two. The cougar had come onto my line at Station 4, and there was nothing unnatural about it. I need to be careful with that word. Nothing unnatural. Because there was everything unlikely about it. A big tom by the spread of the track, a round print, 4 toes, no claw marks, that leading toe you learn to pick out. And here is the thing that stopped my heart, in the good way, the way it's supposed to stop when you love this work. There are not supposed to be cougars here. The eastern cougar was declared extinct. Officially, formally, on the books, there is no breeding population of mountain lion anywhere in these mountains. Hasn't been for the better part of a century. The last confirmed one in this state was shot before my grandfather was born. Every few years, somebody reports a panther on a ridge, and every few years the district writes it off as a bobcat, a house cat, a dog, a story. And I was standing over a track that was none of those things. I was standing over a resident tom. Because he'd signed the whole station, the way only a resident does, a scrape at the edge of the patch where he'd raked up a little pile of duff with his hind feet and marked it, and scat on the trail a few yards on, twisted and full of deer hair, still soft enough to place within a day or two. That's most of the job, honestly. People think tracking is footprints, but a print is just one word. The scat tells you what it's eating. The scrapes and the scent marks tell you it's not passing through, it's holding ground, telling other cats whose mountain this is. You read the whole sentence, not the one word. And Station 4's sentence was impossible and complete. A big male panther, fed and settled and established on a mountain that hadn't held one in 100 years. I want you to understand what that is, to a man like me. That's the find of a career. That's the photograph in the state magazine, the hair sample that rewrites the mammal list, the thing you tell the story of at every survey crew dinner for the rest of your life. I'm the one who confirmed the cougar came back. I measured him and photographed him and pulled the hair the snare had caught with my hands not quite steady, and I was not thinking about the light anymore, or the 2 stations I still had to read, or getting off the mountain. I was thinking that this cat was going up my line ahead of me, and that if I followed him, if I read him station to station, built the whole picture, got him on camera, I would walk off Kettle Divide, the man who found the impossible animal. So when the tracks went up, I went up. It hooked me by the best part of myself, the part that loves the work, and it reeled me up that mountain like a fish. I have thought about that a great deal since. Whether it knew to wear the one shape that would make me follow it anywhere. He was at Station 5, too. Same cat. You know a track the way you know handwriting, and this was the same hand. But at 5, he'd changed his mind about something. The gait had shortened and deepened, the prints crowding closer together, driven harder into the dirt, the way a cat's track reads when it drops from a walk into that low, loading, deliberate creep. A stalk. Cats do it. It's not strange in itself. What's strange is that there was nothing at Station 5 to stalk. Its bare shoulder, no cover, no prey sign, nothing a cougar hunts. He'd dropped into a hunting crouch on open ground for no reason I could read, and held it, and gone on up the ridge. Up my line, the same way I was going. And there was a scent mark at 5 that I couldn't identify. A cougar marks with scat and scrape and a spray, musk and cat, the same essential smell similar to every bobcat scrape in these woods, unmistakable, an honest animal smell. This wasn't that. It was heavy in the still air over the crouch, and it was wrong in a way I've never had to describe before and hope never to again. Under the cat musk there was something else, a low, sweet rotten note like meat left in a closed room, like the back of a den where things have died. I stood in it and my throat closed and some animal knot at the base of my skull pulled tight, the part of you older than language that knows a smell means leave. I noted it unresolved and I did not linger in it, and that, at least, was the one smart thing I did all day. I stood at 5 longer than I should have, and I did something then I've never told anyone. I put my own boot down beside the track, toe to toe, the way you do to scale a print against something known. And the crouch stride of that cat matched the length of my own walking stride almost exactly. At the time, I told myself it meant nothing. A big tom, a long cat, coincidence. But a stalk is paced to the thing being stalked. A cat shortens or lengthens its creep to the gait of what it's closing on. And that track was paced to me. I raked Station 5 smooth, and I did not, yet, let myself hold that thought. This is the part I've turned over most in the years since. How far up the mountain my own training carried me before the animal under the training finally spoke. Because a tracker's whole discipline is to not spook, to not tell yourself stories, to read what's in the dirt and only what's in the dirt. That discipline is a gift, right up until it's the thing walking you into the dark. Between Station 5 and 6, I found the kill, and the kill is where my training first cracked. It was a white-tailed doe, maybe 50 yards off the line, and I only went to it because a wrong smell and a set of ravens will pull a tracker off his route every time. A cougar kill is a tidy, legible thing. The cat opens the body cavity, feeds on the organs and the hindquarters, and then it caches the carcass, drags it under brush, and rakes leaves and dirt over it to hide it from scavengers and come back to it. It's one of the most recognizable signs there is. I've read 100 of them. This doe had been opened, but nothing about the rest of it was a cat. It wasn't cached, it was arranged, laid out in the open on its side with the legs set straight, deliberate, the way nothing in nature leaves a body. It hadn't been fed on like a cat feeds. The meat was mostly there, and what was gone in a way I won't put in your ear. And it was fresh, the blood at the throat still tacky, the eye not yet clouded. Fresh enough that whatever had done it while I was reading tracks 100 yards downhill, and had heard me coming, and had walked away from a full kill to go on up my line instead. It left the doe. It wanted the thing on the transect more. There were prints in the blood-soaked ground around the doe. 4 of them came in. 2 of them went out. At Station 6, the cat was standing on 2 legs. At Station 6, the track came onto the plate as a cougar. 4 feet, that same tom, the round pad, the normal cat gait, and then, in the middle of my raked ground, it changed. The hind feet came down again in the next stride, and the front feet did not. The prints kept going in a line, but they were only the back feet now, set one in front of the other, deeper, longer, the whole weight of the animal risen up over them. And the shape of the hind foot had opened, spread, the pad lengthening, the toes drawing out, so that what pressed into the far edge of my station was not a cat's foot, and was not a man's foot, but was on its way from the one to the other. 4 legs onto the plate, 2 legs off it, walking upright, up my line, into the country I had to climb through to get home. I stood over that station for a long time. I did not photograph it. It's the one professional failure of my career, the single most important track I ever found, and I have no image of it, because some part of me did not want to hold a lens between my eye and that ground for as long as a photograph takes. But the trail cam mounted on Station 6's equipment frame should have caught an image. It's motion triggered, and it fires on anything that crosses the patch. I've got 6 years of bobcats and bears and 1 very surprised turkey to prove it. So I pulled the card and I thumbnailed through it right there, and the camera had fired. Time-stamped that afternoon, the right window, a whole burst of frames. And every frame was the empty station. Raked dirt, the far trees, nothing on it. The camera had triggered on something heavy enough and warm enough to trip a motion sensor, fired its burst the way it's designed to, and photographed bare ground. As if whatever stood on that patch to leave a print deep enough to read had put nothing in front of the lens at all. I have thought about that more than the track itself. The track it left, the picture it didn't. I wrote 3 words in the field book. Anomalous. Do not recheck. I thought about heading back to the trailhead in the truck, but up the trail was a survey hut with a door that locked. The arithmetic of fear told me the hut was safety, and it was closer. What my fear did not do was account for the fact that mattered, that the tracks were going up, too. That whatever had stood up at Station 6 was walking the same direction I was going, toward the same small box, and getting there first. Station 7 sits in a stand of pine, soft ground, and when I came up on it, the raked plate already held a print. The 2-legged one, fresh, laid down since I'd smoothed that plate 3 days before setting the line. It had crossed 7 ahead of me. It had left the drainage and climbed onto my line, and it was walking my route, station to station, up a path maybe 6 people in the district even know exists. It knew where I was going, and it was getting there first. By Station 8, I was no longer pretending this was a survey. 8 had a print too, deeper, the stride longer, and by then the light had gone amber and the shadows had that late reach to them. I half ran the last stretch to the hut with my pack banging and my breath loud in my own ears. And that was when I stopped seeing its sign in the dirt and started hearing it in the trees. The transect above 8 runs along the lip of the timber, open ground on one side, dark pine wall on the other. And somewhere in that wall, something was keeping pace with me. When I walked, it walked. I could hear it in the duff just inside the tree line, off my right shoulder. A heavy footfall matched to mine so nearly that at first I thought it was the echo of my own boots off the trees, the way sound plays tricks on a ridge at dusk. So I tested it. I stopped. And the sound in the timbers stopped a half-beat late. I stood in the open with my heart slamming, and I listened to a silence, the two of us holding still on either side of that tree line, waiting to see who moved first. Then I made myself walk, slow, and it walked, slow, that heavy tread ghosting along inside the pines, exactly level with me, never gaining, never falling back, escorting me toward the hut the way a dog walks a sheep to the pen. I never saw it in the trees. I had a wall of pine 6 feet to my right with something the size of a bear walking upright inside it, close enough to hear its weight come down. Every instinct screamed at me to turn and face it, but I didn't turn. I gave it the side of my face in my steady pace, and I walked the last quarter mile. Up the trail with a thing at my shoulder that I could hear breathing, a low, working bellows sound between the footfalls. I did not run, and I did not look, and I have never in my life wanted anything the way I wanted the 4 walls of the hut. I made the hut at dusk, metal box on a raised platform, 1 door, 1 shuttered window. I got inside and threw the bolt and stood in the dark with my back against the door and my heart going like a bird in a sack. And slowly, slowly, the walls did their work. A bolted door is a bolted door. I got the stove lit. I ate something I didn't taste. I told myself the thing I'd built a career on, that there is always an ordinary answer, that in the morning I would find it had been 2 animals, or a trick of the raking, or my own tired eyes. I got in the bag, and for a while, I slept. The scream woke me. If you have never heard a panther scream, I can only tell you that the first time, it stops your heart, because it is the sound of a woman being murdered. Cougars make a cry so like a human woman's scream of terror that people have run into the woods thinking someone was being killed. This was against the wall of the hut. Not in the valley, not up the ridge. A body length away through a sheet of steel, at the height of my head where I lay on the bunk, so close I felt the sound in my teeth. And it was wrong. A cougar screams to carry. It throws the sound out across the country to be heard a mile off. This was not thrown. This was placed. Right at the wall, right at my ear, the volume of a thing that wanted exactly 1 listener to hear it. Then it walked to the platform. The deck is planks on a steel frame, and it has a voice. It takes weight the way a dock does, a flex and settle you feel in the soles of your feet before you hear it. I'd felt it under my own boots 100 times. Now I felt it from the bunk, lying rigid in the dark. The deck taking weight at the far corner, and easing, and the next slow step, and easing. It was walking the outside of the hut. And I lay there and I read its gait through the floor the way I'd read it in the dirt all day, because I could not stop being what I am, and what the floor told me put a cold down my spine that I have never fully gotten warm from since. It was walking on 2 legs. The rhythm was a biped's. Step, step, step. Even, upright, heel and then weight, the pace of a tall person walking slow. Around the corner, along the wall past my head, around the next corner, unhurried, all the way around the box and back, the deck flexing deep under something that weighed more than any man. A cat on 4 feet has a 4-beat gait. You cannot mistake it for anything else once you know it. This had 2. The cougar that came onto my line at Station 4 was walking around my hut in the dark on two legs, and it screamed once more, at the door this time, and the bolt held, and it did not try the handle. It didn't need to. It had all night, and it knew where I was, and it wanted me to lie in the dark and understand that it knew. I did not open the shutter. Every hour of that night it came back, a scream at the wall, the two-legged tread around the deck, a silence that was worse than either. And every hour I lay still and kept the shutter shut, because the shutter was the last decision left that was mine. I told myself, hold till light. Cats hunt at dusk and dawn and dark. Hold till the sun is up and it will go to cover like every predator does, and then I walk out. It was a child's bargain, and I knew it, and I held to it because it was all I had. Twice in the night, it did more than pace. The first was the roof. Somewhere in the small hours, the tread came up, not around the deck, but onto the box, the steel skin of the roof booming and denting under a weight it was never built to hold, two-footed, deliberate, crossing the low peak above me and stopping directly over the bunk. It stood there. I lay on my back in the dark, staring up at a ceiling I couldn't see, at a point of steel I knew was flexing down toward my face under the weight of the thing, and it was still, and I was still, and the whole hut ticked and groaned around us, and I understood it was listening for me the way I'd spent my life listening for it. I did not breathe. After a while, the weight lifted and the roof popped back up into shape with a sound like a struck drum. The second was the door. Near the end of the night, it came to the door, and it did not scream and it did not move away. It set its weight against the door. I felt the whole hut take the push, the bolt creaking in its plate, and it held there, leaning, testing, patient, the way you lean on a thing to learn how much it will take. The bolt held. It could have kept pushing. I have thought about that more than anything, that it tested the door, learned exactly what it would cost to come through, and chose not to. Because it did not have to. Because morning was coming, and it knew I would have to open that door myself. Gray came eventually. The passes had stopped, and in the thin first light with the sun not yet over the ridge, the arithmetic had changed. Staying was death by slow degrees, and the trailhead was hours down, but the light was coming, and a moving target on open trail in daylight was better than a trapped one in a box. I made myself step out into the cold blue morning to start down. It was waiting for me. It was off the corner of the platform, maybe 15 feet, low in the blue shadow where the sun hadn't reached. And it was down on all fours now, gathered, the great cat shape of it huge and wrong, the shoulders too high, the length of it too much. A panther built at the scale of a bear and put together by something that had only heard a cat described. I got that much in half a second, at the edge of my vision, and its eyes came up to mine. I cannot tell you the color, because the one piece of the old stories everyone agrees on is that you do not meet its eyes. That the ruin isn't in the claws, it's in the looking. And in the quarter second my gaze went toward its eyes, I felt it. A wrongness that came in through the seeing, a white pressure, a heat behind my own eye like a coal held too close, a pull toward the yellow of it that wanted the rest of my looking and would not have given it back. It was the single worst sensation of my life, and it lasted a heartbeat, because before I could think, I wrenched my head away and threw my whole body sideways off the platform. I went down hard and caught the steel corner of the deck frame across the face as I fell, the leading edge of it into the cheekbone and up into the socket, the eye itself dragging against metal. And the morning went white on that side, a white that was pain and not light, and then red, and then gone. I don't know how long I was down. When I came back, I was face down with one eye full of blood and the other blind white and screaming, and I could not see, and I did not know if it was on me. I lay dead still in the cold, playing dead the way you're taught to for a cat, the only card I had left. And I strained the one sense I had into a silence that gave me nothing, because it had never once let me hear it coming. It could have been a mile off. It could have been over me, its breath at my neck. There is no describing that stretch of blindness. I got my good eye clear with a shaking hand, one wipe, braced to see the whole of it filling the sky above me. And there was nothing but the empty blue morning and the frost and the long way down. The sun was up. That, I think, is the only reason I'm here. It had gone to cover with the light, the way the old men said it would, the way every predator does. Or it had done to me what it came to do, put its eye in mine and left me a marked man, and had no more need to stay. I have never decided which, and I've stopped trying, because both answers keep me up. I walked out half-blind. Hours, one eye, the good one watering so badly the trail swam, down through every station where its two-legged track still waited in the dirt for me to pass a second time. And its prints came down alongside the trail. I could see them at the ragged edge of my one working eye, the upright stride keeping pace with mine, drifting close on the steep ground and wide on the easy, walking me down the mountain the way it had walked me up. I never turned my head. I kept my one eye on my boots, and I walked at the pace of a man with somewhere to be and no reason to run, because the last thing my training had left to give me was the knowledge that running is what turns you into prey. And somewhere above the final switchback, the track beside me left the trail and went back up into the timber, and I came out of the trees into the gravel lot alone. I looked back once from the truck. The ground at the trailhead was soft and it took a print clean, and there was nothing on it but my own two boots coming out. It had walked me to the exact edge of the country where another human being might have seen it, and there it had stopped and turned and gone back up to its mountain. It knew where the line was. It had always known where the line was. There was one more thing, and I almost didn't, and I wish I hadn't. When I'd worked up the line that day, I'd pulled the hair snares like I always do, the little barbed tabs on the equipment frames that catch a few strands off any animal that rubs the scent post, and Station 5's snare, the one at the stalk, had held hair. I'd bagged it out of pure habit, and weeks later, half-healed, I sent it to the state genetics lab with the season's other samples. The report came back on everything in a tidy table. Cougar at 4, bear at 2 others, and Station 5. Sample failed to amplify. No usable sequence, possible degradation or contaminant. I called the lab tech, and she was quiet a second, and then she said it wasn't degraded. She said there was plenty of material, good clean follicles, but the machine couldn't call it, that it read as mammal, and then the closer the sequencer looked, the less it could decide which mammal, like the sample kept changing, and in 11 years she'd never had a canid or a felid or a primate come back as all three and none. She asked me, a little too lightly, what exactly I'd snared up there. I told her, a cougar. In the district's old newspaper morgue I found it, the way you find these things, sideways and by accident. A stretch of winters in the early 1930s when something was killing stock all through this end of the county. Calves and a mule and a man's whole flock of sheep. The paper called it a panther. But there's a letter in the file from a game warden of the day to his supervisor, and the warden writes that the tracks at the kills did not stay a panther's, that they come in on 4 and go out on 2, and that the old Cherokee families up the Cutshin had a name for it that they would say to him only once and never again, and would not spell. I have heard it called a wampus cat. When they ran the Kettle Divide Transect the next year, they sent 2 people. I arranged that. I told my supervisor I would not walk that line alone again, and I would not tell him why, and something in my face was enough that he stopped asking and just changed the roster. You will spend your whole life being told the scream in the dark is just a cougar, and nearly every time it will be, and you should believe it, because the ordinary answer is almost always the true one. But learn the gait. Learn it in your bones, 4 feet, and what 4 feet sound like coming, and what they look like in the dirt. Because once in a very long while, the thing that screams like a cat will come onto your line as a cat and leave it walking upright. And on that night, the ordinary answer will get you killed. If the cat stands up, it is not a cat anymore. It is not hunting deer anymore. It is hunting you. 4 places on the map nobody drives to. A smoke you log and leave. A box you're not supposed to read. A line up a mountain. A gate you leave open. 4 rangers went out to those places anyway. Every one of them walked back out. Not one of them came back the same, and not one of them ever went out again. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps us out. And if you've ever worked a job where the country went quiet in a way you couldn't explain, and something in you decided not to find out why, leave it in the comments. We may tell it on this channel someday. Sleep well, if you can. You've been listening to Echoes in the Dark.